Welcome to part 2 of 3 in this heritage talk on Barrows, burials and the Bronze Age at Doveridge. If you've missed part 1, click the link coming up on the screen now. If not, stay put for part 2 up next. We're going to go now from the big things down to the small and narrow down our archaeological gaze, and that's of the magnificent collared urn. And if you're watching this webinar wondering what it must have felt like to be the archaeologist who found the inverted urn and how it felt not only finding it, but then lifting it out of the precious ground, well, I've got you covered. We're joined now by Amy, who's just about to turn her webcam on, and Amy perhaps has one of the best notches in her archaeological belt, as she was the one who found the urn. And so, Amy, I would love to hear the story of what it was like for you on site. So could you take us back to the beginning?
Hi, Emma. Yeah, definitely. So it started as a lot of archaeological excavations do. We do evaluation trenches, and that's where we excavate by machine. And that gives us little glimpses into what could be underground. And at this stage, because they are just slit trenches, 2 meters wide, 50 meters long, it's quite difficult to identify the full extent of a feature. So although we did see a few glimpses, it wasn't until we did the open area excavation that we had something, we could see we had something interesting. So like I say, after the trenching stage, we came back and we stripped a large area, focusing on those little gems that we'd discovered. And from this, we managed to reveal the full extent of the barrow, surrounded by a ring ditch. So the plan to go ahead and excavate the site was to deal with the features by hand digging quadrants or halves. And those are just terms used for the digging technique. So for example, if you can imagine in plan, you've got a circular feature.
And
And we
plans looking above and down, isn't it?
exactly right. And we just draw a line straight through the centre of it, remove the soil from one half of that feature, and we can then see really lovely stratigraphy of how that feature had built up. Quadranting, as you can probably guess, is the same again. You split it halfway across the other axis, so you've got quarters. So these were post holes, pits, cremation burials, some shrub bowls. The ring ditch was dug slightly differently because obviously it's a lot bigger. So what we did is we measured every sort of 4 or 5 meters along the ditch, and then we excavated 1 meter length slots by hand again. So at this time, it was quite clear that we had quite an interesting site, but it wasn't until the final few days of the project that it actually turned really, really special. So the last sort of week of the project, we were 100% excavating. So as I said earlier, we excavate half of the feature, and this is essentially taking the other half out. So that's what I mean when I say 100% excavating. And this was focusing mainly on the post holes and the pits because the cremation burials were already fully recorded at this stage.
Gosh,
So I
it's
was
like double
assigned,
digging.
so I was assigned the task of 100% in these features. And for anyone that has got any fieldwork experience, it's not the most exciting bit. You're kind of winding down. You don't really expect a lot. It is just for the last few bits of finds retrieval that you may recover from the other half of the feature. So my idea was to just get the biggest one out of the way first. And I began just doing that with my trowel because it was quite sandy and soft. So I thought I could do it with my trowel. But after about 5 minutes, I did notice that the original post hole that I was taking the other half out was actually a lot smaller than where I'd got to and where I was now excavating. So I thought, okay, I'm not in that feature anymore. I'm probably in the made ground of the barrow or in some animal disturbance or something like that. So I thought, okay, if this is going to be a bit of a bigger job, I'll pick a bigger tool. I'll pick a mattock, which is a bit like a pickaxe. Just luckily, just before I decided to change weapon, I managed to take one last trowel, and I actually came across something that sort of hit the trowel, and there was a bit of resistance. So I thought, hang on, I'll maybe not pick the mattock up just yet. So I had a little bit of a clean around the object and saw that it was some sort of ceramic vessel. And honestly, at first, I thought it was just perhaps a plant pot, and I definitely did not want to get my hopes up. The last thing you want to do on site is shout that you've got some treasure, and the embarrassment of it ending up just being something modern that the farmers put in there or dropped or anything like
Because
that.
that does happen, doesn't it?
It absolutely does happen, and at this point as well, we are only on the first archaeological horizon. So we're
Mhm.
about 30 centimeters of topsoil off the ground. So you can imagine sort of the plough and cows. There were cows in the field, things like that would have perhaps sort of damaged something if it was older than a plant pot. So I hadn't actually called anyone over at this point. I wanted to be sure that it was something special. So if you can see by the images on the screen now that it was special. It was special. And as I revealed more and more of it, I could see the fabric a bit clearer. And could tell that it was older. So after that, we sort of got in touch with specialists and how to proceed. And then it was down to myself and a couple of my colleagues to continue excavating it fully, and then eventually the dreaded lifting of it to take it back for further analysis off the site. Uh, it was it was a day that was planned because we needed to get it off site. However, the weather was not planned. It rained. It rained pretty much constantly the entire time we were attempting the lift. But once you started, you've got to just keep going, really. And we were determined as a team just to get that out intact. That was our one goal, was to try and get it out.
No
So
pressure
it
then.
was no pressure whatsoever. Something that had been repeatedly told to us, as Jackie will tell you, uh, it's a precious find. It's quite a rare find to have it so well preserved. So it was quite a challenge. The ground beneath the urn was very, very compact, very stony. So it did take a good hour or two just to really gently dislodge that stone, so that we could then put a board underneath it. And we knew that any sort of slight vibrations or impact on the ground around the urn could actually damage it. But luckily we got the board under, and we lifted it intact, and it went back home, back in the van. And it was such a relief to see it leave sight, and kind of and it was a really good job done. It was intact and remains intact now.
Wow, gosh, what a find. So we've got an image now on the screen and it shows some of the features on this site. So the first thing, could you just point out for us, Amy, where actually the ring ditch is? If you can listen
Yes.
about some of the barrows, you may be able to pick it out, but could you just clear it up for us, Amy?
Yes, of course. Yeah. So I think the biggest label you'll be able to see is 1163.
Hmm.
1163 is labeling, and it's the sort of darker shaded ring that's in the center of the image. And you can see, hopefully, from the width that has been
Changes,
recorded
doesn't
there, it's changed, and towards the east, it's actually quite narrow. It goes down to its narrowest is around 0.5 meter, and at its widest it's about 1.5 meters. So you can just get a bit of context as to how dramatic that change is, and that's just from ploughing and all sorts. And you can see quite clearly as well 1016. Now that's a later ditch, and that's a really good example of how something can completely truncate an older piece of archaeology, just from later human activity or animal activity as well.
Wow. And this one that goes off, that's been dated to medieval and sort of later, hasn't it? But
Yeah.
going back to the barrow itself, obviously, if I'm trying to imagine what it looked like back in the day, a few thousand years ago, and then some, we've got our ditch, our ring ditch that we see first, and there's normally the barrow mound. And was there any evidence of the barrow mound remains that you said that you found on the site?
Yes, there was some. There was some. So again, on this figure, you can see hopefully a sort of enlarged square, where
Mhm.
there are some dots on the screen as well, and that's indicating the burial mound. That's
So
all that
that's
was
the
left.
remains of the mound
That's
itself.
correct. Yeah. So that's all that was left, and that's all we had to work with to record on site. But you can see it is in the enlarged image. There was quite a lot there still, but it was just concentrated in that smaller area again, just possibly due to the amount of sort of ploughing and later activity in the area.
God, so lucky to still have it. And obviously we've got all these cremation burials and things like that, and the cremation related deposits. Whereabouts is our magnificent collared urn in this?
So, yeah, we had 6 cremation burials in total, and within them there were 8 individuals. So we can see again on the enlarged image the darker circle, one of the darker circles that's annotated with the number 1050, and
Hmm.
that's the one that contained the inverted urn cremation burial.
Gosh. So now we're about to watch a clip of Amy and her colleagues lifting up this urn. So we're going to turn both of our webcams off and we'll go to the video clip now.
Moment. We are trying to lift Bronze Age collared urn.
Thank you for watching part 2 of this heritage talk. In part 3, we'll get to grips with Bronze Age burial rites and rituals as we take a closer look inside the contents of the cremation urn. So click like and subscribe to our channel for the final part on Barrows, burials and the Bronze Age at Doveridge.